What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Welcome to episode 12 of Red's Ramblings. On this one, I go back talking with Terry Miller. He wanted to discuss the Rayshard Brooks situation up in Atlanta, and more so, we delved into police situations, brutality as a whole, and talk about reform and all that kind of good stuff. So, controversial, touchy subject, live emotions involved. As always, I appreciate support, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know about any opinions you have down in the comments. I'm open to everything. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy. Here it comes.
So, where do you want to start with this? Because again, you got with me wanting to talk about what happened up in Atlanta, and I had to get to work. So now here we are. I figured if you want to start it off.
Well, just to summarize what we discussed on our first episode that we
Mm-hmm.
did together, I guess we discussed the situation with George Floyd,
Correct.
and we talked about how his death ultimately was a result of the police being too rough, ultimately resulting in his death.
Yes.
And there still controversy as to how that is perceived, the perception of that, and the different viewpoints of that, and how that's perceived between whites and blacks. And I think we have a new incident
Mm-hmm.
that occurred recently here in Atlanta, uh, where the young man was asleep at the drive-through, and of course, um, ultimately things led, and ultimately he ended up being shot
Mm-hmm.
in the back. I mean, there's a lot of details in between that, but ultimately, the result of that, he ended up being shot in the back by the police, and we can discuss the details of that as we get deeper into the conversation. But yeah, so I guess I was in a debate on yesterday with a bail bondsman. He
Mm-hmm.
was a bail bondsman. Um, I was just listening to his commentary, and he commented about his job, his experience as a bail bondsman, and his experience with the criminal system, and basically his point of view, at least the way I interpret it, was that as a bail bondsman, he sees crime on a consistent basis,
Yeah.
and basically he quoted the same numbers that you discussed in a presentation or in a episode, one of your episodes, where uh, the numbers basically reflected that more white men get killed by cops than black men, more black men commit crimes, uh, and of course, the incarceration of black men. All of those numbers basically reflect that blacks do most of the crime, and that was his point. And basically, he, as a bail bondsman, saw that and pretty much still sees that on a daily basis. And so now, and I'm just kind of adding that to the conversation because I think um, his point of view uh, might be reflective of the point of view of many of uh, your viewers, or even many uh, white viewers
Mm-hmm.
who see young men who go into the system being charged with a crime, and then, of course, as a result, after being charged with that crime, they see a guilty person who committed a crime that needed to be punished for the crime that was committed. And the perception of that leads to how I believe many of your viewers feel that many crimes are committed by blacks, which is really on the back end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going now to the front of the conversation where this young man was asleep in the drive-thru. And this is the front of the encounter. This is where it began. And I don't think that many viewers really take note of how things might begin. This, did you get me?
Yeah.
And what I just saw a text, but anyway, getting back to what I'm saying. So here he is in the drive-thru, okay, and maybe and I'm just hypothetically saying he could have been arrested or whatever and been charged, whatever, and the end result of that was that he would have seen the bail bondsman, okay, bail bondsman would have bailed him out. Bail bondsman say, well, you know what, you got charged with public intoxication. You know what, I'm gonna bail you out. You need to show up in court, pay your fine, serve your time to the community. Don't be bad no more. All right, you deserve the punishment. Now here's this guy sleeping. He's asleep in the drive-thru. This is where it all is. This is where it begins.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're gonna take a look at how situations occur that lead to what we might coin as police brutality.
Mm-hmm.
I guess unwanted incarceration of black men, the perception of people who see on one side injustice versus people who on one side see justice.
Yeah.
Because I believe in this situation, many people are even more divided and even
Oh,
more
yeah.
confused and even more divided about how and what should have occurred in this situation.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with that.
And I
Now
know that
this.
was a long way around, Jamie, but just trying to give focus to what might be pertinent to helping the audience understand things in terms of how they might begin
Yeah.
and that process, and how when we have this conversation at the end of the death of George Floyd or at the end of the death of black individuals, at the end of that, we still are divided, and we just kind of need to kind of dissect some things so we can just get a better understanding of why there's such a divide.
No, I completely understand that for sure. And yeah, between Rayshard Brooks and the George Floyd is definitely a bigger difference in who's on what side between those two cases. Um, and talking about that situation, that's all well and good. We can totally get into that. I personally feel I kind of have to roll back. One point you said, um, where how do I word this? Like, yeah, obviously, I have some viewers that definitely, I kind of just recently learned it actually. Viewers that don't see the way I see things, and actually kind of caught me off guard because I actually want more people who disagree or don't necessarily see it the same way. That way, at least then they're paying attention to the other side. But I would strongly argue against that most of my viewers agree with um, like it that Black Lives don't matter or however you want to word that. I would strongly say that most of mine who actually like listen the whole way through are probably on both our sides on a majority of those situations. Now, that's neither here nor there pertaining to the particular situation. But I just that kind of caught me off guard. But um
I understand.
now yeah, now one of the things one of the additional reasons why when you spoke to me about wanting to get on and doing this um one of the additional reasons why I wanted to hold off was because it was still pretty fresh, right? Like all the details weren't out yet, and because it is a more divided, it's a stickier situation than the George Floyd. It's not as clear cut as that one. So I felt, before I start saying what I think at the time, I wanted to wait until more things come out. And so obviously I don't know how long it's been, like a week or week and a half, I think, since that's happened, and a lot more has come out. And it's still it's still a sticky, tricky situation. Because on one hand, you got he got shot in the back, 100%, cannot argue against that. And then you got the other people who say, well, he fought, he resisted, he deserved it, right?
Right.
And that's where I've been trying to find a way to navigate towards a common ground for both sides of that, because it it seems to come down to, in my opinion, it seems to come down to, obviously, from all this, it's really come a more focus on police training and reform and all that kind of stuff. So you got to look at how these officers were trained, and then you get into the whole moral aspect of, he could have done better, he should have done better. Because, like you said, the whole video, if you watch it, everything started out nice, and Rayshard was compliant, was answering all questions. He offered, hey man, can I just get like an Uber or something? I can walk home, you know. And part of me is like, why couldn't he have just walked home? Why couldn't you just gotten him an Uber lift or something? Why couldn't you just driven him home? His car was out of the way at that point. He wasn't bothering anybody. I don't see why that couldn't have happened. And then obviously it got a little further. He tested a little bit above the alcohol level, and so they proceeded to put him under arrest. And yeah, he fought, and I think two officers were involved, and he ended up, tasers were fired. He ended up taking the one officer's taser and running. And this is where I think it got a little tricky for some people. And you can go both ways, I guess. I don't really know. I know what I feel should have happened and how I say I would have done it, but I wasn't there. I'm just saying how I would have, seen the whole situation, or how I would have acted if I was there. Because there is one clip I remember hearing where, before Rayshard broke free from him and started running, the one officer yelled out, "He's got my taser." And you can clearly see the taser is yellow. They're bright yellow, right? So that's where I go into, okay, he's got your taser. Understand that. That is wrong, shouldn't have happened. I got you. He's running away. He's drunk. You have his car. You've already checked his ID. You know where he's going to go, more than likely. And he turns around, doesn't even fire. I don't think he fires. He could have. Either way, the officer behind him sees it, drops his taser, picks up his gun, and like you said, shoots him in the back. So you got people clearly only seeing that well, he pulled a taser out on him, that he deserved it, or what do you expect the officer to do? To which I say, well, he had a taser himself. Why couldn't he have just done that? And then you got everyone what he could have missed. A lot of it's woulda, shoulda, coulda stuff, which even comes down to how we are now talking about this. So even still, I feel that whole situation is tricky and sticky, and there's no clear cut right or wrong to that as there was with the George Floyd. That was blatantly wrong across the board. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. The biggest issue I've noticed, though, from those who basically agree with the officer in the murder of Rayshard Brooks, is they completely disregard the aftermath. Which is as clear as day. The aftermath of, okay, so you've just shot him now. He's down on the ground. You kick him. Like they have it on tape. That officer goes and proceeds to kick a man after you've just shot him. And then the other one stands on top of him. And they totally disregard that. And that's a real big issue I find. Because me and JT spoke about it a little bit, because obviously I wanted to get, from being an officer like his, I wanted to get his take on it. And he's kind of leaning, I would say, how I am, to where the shooting itself is a sticky situation. Yeah, he pointed the taser, and you could say, well, it was a taser, it wasn't going to kill him. Officer or that police department might say differently. And that I think goes more into, well, that's just a clear sign where you need additional training for your officers. And I don't think anyone can argue against that. And that's nationwide across the board. There needs to be additional training. But you can't argue against how wrong it is that you shot the man, whatever, all right. You proceed to kick him as he's down and bleeding. And obviously, as we all know, he ends up passing away because of it. But you proceed to kick him as he's down. And the other officer comes around and stands on top of him. You can't be on one side of a story yet neglecting the entire part of the story. And I find that's a huge problem in a whole bunch of situations these days, whether it's, police brutality or just in any type of topic in general these days. A lot of folks, they never look at everything. They never look at the whole story. They find what fits their view and they stick to it without even looking at the parts of that same story, that same situation that totally go against everything they would probably believe in and be for,
Well, I think you bring about a really good point when you start talking about training.
Yeah.
Because I think in that situation that he was in, I believe the news stated that they were in a conversation anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes.
Yes.
Where they were just kind of discussing and kind of going back and forth. And
yeah,
it was really not a decision that was made whether or not to arrest him, but they came to the decision after him failing a breathalyzer to go ahead and arrest him. Okay. And I think the decision to arrest him may have hinged on factors that I don't think that many people consider. He was going to be arrested, and he was going to have to go into jail, and he was going to go through a court process by where he was going to be mandated to take classes. He was going to be given a fine,
Mm-hmm.
and he may have even been in violation of a parole. I know he
Mm-hmm.
had been in trouble before. And of course, you know, I don't know how many times he had been in trouble, but I know he had a history of being in trouble with the criminal system.
Yes.
So all of that was going to take place, which that's where the system is set up in a way to incarcerate people for crime. And black men are disproportionately incarcerated. Okay. So he was going to be incarcerated and he was going to go through the system. Whereas he could have not been arrested. And there's a difference between how the culture of the police sees one race over another.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. Uh, I have two friends. I'm not gonna call their names, and they're they're married. One of the couples I married. One of the couples we met through my daughter's uh, third grade graduation, and we've been friends with them. But both of them are white females, and they have recently one got their they didn't get their third DUI, but they got stopped for their third DUI,
Mm-hmm.
and the police officer knew it. Let the husband come pick them up. They parked the car. That was one.
Yeah.
The other one, she was at a friend's house. She got stopped by the police. She was DUI. They let a friend come pick her up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have Rayshard sitting in the driveway, asleep. Officer comes, knocks on the window, asks him, "Are you okay?" He says yes. He parks the car, and the conversation goes on.
Yes.
So as a trained professional, okay, you're you you you're you're entering into a situation where you're to use your skills, right?
Correct.
I'm looking at this just as a professional in the field of government. I mean, I'm a professional in the field of government. Um, Anybody who works in the field of government, whether they work for DJJ, DSS,
Mm-hmm.
police department, and I know there's a big difference between working as a police officer versus working as a mental health therapist. But well, of course, we have to use our judgment in situations. Some situations can just turn awry in a
Mm-hmm.
matter of a second. Okay, but uh, that officer approached that situation, and I think an officer probably could speak on this better than I could.
Mm-hmm.
But why did it take him that long to assess a situation
Mm-hmm.
and to
I think that's fair.
determine why or if he should be arrested? What I mean, why did it take so long?
Yeah.
Now, we know when we arrest people, there's a system that people go through. I'm not saying I'm not or justifying why he ran, but black
Mm-hmm.
people know the system better than anybody.
Yeah.
They sit in the courthouses. You go sit in the courtrooms, and 60% of them are black sitting in there for traffic violation.
Yeah. I think. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, you got a good point there, and I'm gonna let you know. Being a white person, I'm gonna let you know how that view's gonna be responded to. Because while I agree with what you're saying, the opposition will say something along this. Will say, well, he broke the law. He they took a while to figure out his background, and then obviously they going to arrest him because he failed the breathalyzer. That's what and they're gonna leave it right there. They're gonna leave it. They will not think it any further. I promise you that. I sadly promise you that. They were not thinking any deeper. A few will, thankfully, and more are doing so. But I'll send you when we get done with this. I'll send you a thread that I went over last night. That you'll
Right.
see that at some point. Anyways, so to that situation, I actually agree because yeah, it took a while for them to decide it, right? And during that whole talking back and forth, again, it was, no, the guy was, you could tell he might have been slurring a bit, you know what I'm saying? But he was also obviously tired, because they just woke him up. So you can go either way with that. But he wasn't being belligerent. He was listening. He was paying attention. He was answering questions, yada, yada. He knew, he didn't want to. He knew the situation. I can't remember the exact words, but he said, "I know the situation," or he said something along the lines of, "He knows the situation he's in, and he just wants to deal with it, so he's going to be compliant." All that. He said something along those lines. So the man knew what's up. So the officers knew that he knew, and all that kind of stuff. So with the whole, I think amicability is a word. I might be wrong. I know amicable is, but with it being as easygoing as it started, I don't see why the officer, like I said earlier, especially when Rayshard asked, why can't I just walk home? Why can't I just get an Uber or Lyft or whatever? Why he couldn't have done that? Because as you mentioned with those two friends of yours, they had multiples and still got away. And even though I've never had a DUI, I don't really drink, I've had numerous traffic violations. Again, from no license, suspended, all that kind of stuff. Nothing. I got a ticket. I went on about my way. So I see that 100%. I don't see why it couldn't have happened. He wasn't acting any danger. At that time, he wasn't obviously being a menace to anybody. He just wanted to go home. That's how I saw it. I don't see why they couldn't have allowed that. And that part I agree 100%. Because yeah, and that's another thing you brought up, that I'm really getting sick and tired of hearing from the other people. Like you said, he had a history, and there have been a few, even with the George Floyd, that, well, he had this and that and the other. Like, that doesn't justify that man's death. I don't care. I have a past. Everybody has a past. That doesn't mean we are still that same person. It doesn't mean we're not, but it doesn't mean we are. And in that particular situation, whatever he had done, whether it be Rayshard or George, for their particular situation, their past didn't mean anything to justify what happened. And I don't care who you are. So that's one thing I've always aggravated. I've always aggravated when I hear, especially out when you bring it up, or when they bring it up, and like, well, that I'm not trying to justify it. Well, then why the hell are you bringing it up? You don't bring up something like that unless you're trying to make a point.
Now, let me just interject
Okay.
in one stance. And I'm not a police officer. However, you ask for his ID.
Yes.
And you get his ID.
Yes.
And you check his ID. There are no warrants. His ID is good.
Okay.
You know how to find it.
Exactly.
You can find him. Easily can find him. You could,
Easy.
you could give him a ticket and he still goes through the system
Mm-hmm.
because he has to show up in court. If he doesn't show up in court, they put a bench warrant out.
You got his car. Yeah. And I'm gonna add on to that. Because in one of the, and I'll send you a link to it later as well. In one of the things I looked into while thinking about how exactly to navigate this conversation, I pulled up some like training excerpt of a police department or a police official. I don't recall in the article where this officer works, what county, what state. I don't recall any of that. But he just gave a general description of how training is given out. Because one of the things that I've literally always wondered um, is, and I'm sure you've questioned it, and I know many others have as well. Is okay, even let's say even if you want to justify the shooting, why couldn't you have just gone for the leg or something like that, right? I've always wondered that. Why do you have to go? I know center mass obviously is a bigger target. It's easier to hit. I understand that. But still, if you're going to pop off 6 or 7, even though they didn't, if for the ones that have, if you're going to pop off an excessive amount, you can aim lower and you're going to strike. And if you can't hit, you don't need to be an officer. You have your bad aim, you're a bad shot. That's not the job for you. Find something else. But so in looking into that, one of the things JT sent me was from I can't remember who it was, somebody local, an officer, a local officer, sent or spoke out about the Rayshard Brooks case, right? And specifically referenced why officers in general, it seems, don't like go for appendages just to, incapacitate, like wound the person. Obviously not go for the kill. There's no need for that all the time. If they're not shooting and killing other people, why the hell you got to do it? But, and this struck me as odd and confusing, and I don't understand it. But according to this officer, the reason they do not shoot for the leg or other appendages on purpose is because that is unconstitutional and considered cruel and unusual punishment. And that confused the hell out of me, because you're saying shooting to wound somebody and keeping them alive is cruel, but killing them is not. That's how I'm reading that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think too that I think you can go a little bit deeper than that.
Trust me, I can go deeper.
Yeah. In terms of who the police are targeting,
Mm-hmm.
or who the police deem as a citizen of the United States of America.
Okay.
Now, the police in their training, and I don't know about their training in detail, but more or less I'm talking about the culture. The
Mm-hmm.
culture of the police department is to aggressively take down anyone or threats that could potentially endanger citizens.
Correct.
Their culture is pretty much to engage in those situations with lethal force when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
If they deem it necessary, pretty much,
Yes.
or determine that it's a threat, they can't proceed with lethal harm, even if it's something minor. Obviously, if
Yeah.
it's something And I think the culture of that is where the problem lies.
I agree.
Because you can't go from sleeping in a drive-through to dying in the parking lot.
Yeah. I think, and I'm going to interject here real quick, because another thing that I know that I've heard the people who will end up disagreeing with us will say is, well, if they didn't take him out, you don't know what he could have done after it, like if he got away. Exactly. You don't. So you can't say it. You don't know. You can look at everything he's done. He was compliant, blah, 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 and then he filed the cops. All right. But so you're gonna deem him a danger to society and go out and kill him because he might do something? Everybody might do something. That doesn't mean everybody should, what I'm saying? Should end
But
up getting shot.
But that's what they teach.
Exactly.
That's what's taught. It's
I
taught.
agree.
And when you look at, I don't even want to say the exception to the rule, because it's not an exception to the rule. The training should also include, and even as a first measure, proceed as if you're dealing with a citizen of the United States of America, and you're treating them with the utmost respect to serve and protect.
Yeah.
Which has no skin color attached to it.
In reality, yeah. Some people are going to argue against that, but in reality, that is 100% true.
I believe if they taught the police officers on how to handle theft in a non-aggressive way, it would help a lot of police officers.
Yeah. Or not even that, if you even add in just like legitimate unarmed people. Like, he's unarmed. You know what I'm saying? Like, that. Because one of the things in the article I'll send you later, that I forgot to mention when I was speaking about it, was it went into some details that as I kept reading through it, I found contradiction after contradiction in it. And like you said, I'm former military, but I'm not I'm not a law officer. I never was, yada yada. But it spoke about, apparently they used to train officers to shoot, then assess, right? So he described it as popping off, a shot or two at the subject, seeing what was going on, like, was he wounded, was he down, was he still in movement, able to cause harm to an individual, and judging that situation and then going from there, right? And then it evolved over time to shoot and assess. So we're going to play scenario here, hypothetically, obviously. You got a situation, let's say the person is armed, right? So they are armed. You're an officer. Obviously the guy's armed. You are at that point fearful for your life. All right, cool, understandable. So you're saying that you want this officer who's fearful in a state of adrenaline, possible panic, all this, as he's firing, to be able to assess the situation at the same time, which everyone knows guns fire at an extremely high rate. So I don't know what the hell you're going to assess while also trying to take aim. So that's confusing the hell out of me, because at the same time, another part of the article spoke about how the adrenaline causes, obviously, individuals to accusations or jumps in thought. Obviously you're going to see things a little bit differently than if you were clear mind and level headed. If you got a whole bunch of adrenaline running through your veins, right? You're going to see the world differently. Because it spoke about that part also. So you're already saying that when adrenaline is going, they're having to think fast, blah blah blah. They can't do everything, but then you're telling them they can shoot and assess at the same time. Like you can't say they can't do one thing, but then they can do this. That's not how it works. Not just to benefit, the point that person's trying to make. It's not how it works. And then another part they spoke about is another example of why they don't like shoot at appendages to wound the person. And the example they gave was, obviously like in Hollywood, the officer or whatever will shoot the gun out of the person's hands. That's unrealistic, obviously. You got to be a crazy good shot for that. So that's fine. Take that out. Cool. Nobody's asking for that, really. But and arms are small. If you're running, you're moving, all this kind of stuff. Legs, if you're running, they're kind of staying the same. So why don't they go for the legs? Well, they said, this guy's example was they don't go for the legs because the perp or victim, whatever the hell, still has arms. If they have a weapon, they can still fire. All right, that makes sense. If you shoot me in the stomach and I'm not dead, my arms still work though. I can still do the same reason you're suggesting why they can't shoot in the leg is the same reason I can still shoot somebody even if you shoot me center mass, unless you take me out. So you can't say we can't do it this way because of that, but we can do it this way when it's the same fucking situation. You know what I'm saying? Like that makes zero sense. You can't have it like that.
Yeah, the training. I mean, of course, we're not experts on the training. One of the things that I like that some of the departments are doing is having the officers to kind of go into the communities,
yes,
and really become a familiar face. And I think people have to really consider how policing should be done and look at those factors even now. I mean, just kind of take a look at where policing has taken us to and how we need to really adjust how we police.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yeah, you need to be ever ready.
Yes.
As a police officer, but you shouldn't have that adrenaline rush and feel the need to kill.
Exactly.
Or make a decision to kill. I think there's lots of other factors that actually come into play that the academies have to do a better job at capturing.
Yeah.
Even with one of the things that they talked about lately, even with reprimands, once they get so many reprimands, I mean, something has to be done. And I think all of those issues lean towards some of this specific situation that we're talking about. This situation with Rayshard, this situation, the lack of training used. I'm not saying that he wasn't knowledgeable enough, but I don't think that he applied his knowledge of being a police officer to the best of his ability. Now, even as a therapist, I'll tell you that, even in my profession, I've seen people come in and just disrupt families because they got a gut feeling.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or they want to use that power of just being able to sign their name and commit somebody, possibly because the person said something that they didn't like. or they just felt like they just needed to just kind of do this to kind of protect themselves from, getting in trouble with the law themselves.
Yeah.
So, and I'll just kind of share this, but I remember when I first started in the field, the culture, and I was working with kids in a group home. So the culture when I got there, the culture was, you got to keep these kids straight.
Mm.
These kids come from broken homes. They don't listen. They always want to break rules. They're just, incorrigible, some of them. And you got to run a tight ship because these kids can do something to cause you to lose your job. And so they would train us and how to use behavioral restraints.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the cottages or the team leaders that were over the cottages would use these behavioral restraints. And I remember that I wasn't in charge of a cottage. I was more like an assistant, but we had a really good cottage, right? And I remember how our particular cottage, when they would assign the tougher boys to our cottage because we were a group of men, and of course, we used those restraints, and pretty much the kids, they were just terrified to just have those restraints put on them. But I
Mm-hmm.
never did one day, and it changed my life. I was talking to somebody, he said, Terry, those guys, they really listen to y'all. And he said something to me. He said, when you learn how to deal with people without having to put your hands on them, you'll be a really good therapist one day.
Oh yeah.
And it stuck with me.
No,
It stuck.
yep.
And I think that the assessment of how you try to employ police officers, that might be a key factor.
Oh yeah.
The training model used is definitely going to be a key factor. But really tracing these officers in their development, because you don't want that culture to be the culture that really where you use that to just kind of intimidate people and make people fearful
Mm-hmm.
to even trust that you're there really to protect and serve.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right in that, and I think we need to make it clear because I think we kind of got a little um
Off scope a little bit, but
yeah, a little boisterous on some of our critiques and criticisms. I want I know for me, obviously for you, because again, like I said, you work, in a sense with law enforcement through the DOJ and all that kind of stuff. None of us are against cops, right? Like I'm not. It's
right,
just like how everyone, I don't care what side of the fence you're on, whether you're for what we technically believe in or against it. Additional training helps everything and everybody. And I think everyone understands that being an officer is an extremely stressful job. You have new shit popping off just about every day. So that's 100% understandable. And it's because of how stressful and straining both physically and mentally that job can be, why additional training should definitely happen and continue to happen. Even if you're already in, like, there needs to be some type of evaluation to where, even if you came in as a rookie and you were clean, your mind was set, what I'm saying? Hey, you were, they thought you were going to be the best guy that department ever seen, but shit happens. Life
right,
happens. Life can break you down like that. And you
right,
can go from being a great individual to something happening and you are never the same again. And with a job like that, that is 100% possible. And
right,
if there are those like that out there, which I'm sure there are, it wouldn't be a bad thing to take them off the force, help them get the help they need. But
Right.
no, like let them know that, hey man, this job's not for everybody. We're gonna take care of you and help you get the help you need. And I think it falls into and another thing me and you wanted to speak about at a later time is mental health. There's a lot of, obviously you're a mental health therapist. You were mine for a long ass time, and you think in such a manly tough job as being an officer is, that's probably not spoken about often in the how draining, mentally draining it is to the psyche and how it can break you down as a person. Obviously, there's probably a lot of them in there that I'm a man, I can deal with this, blah blah blah. But in the back of them, it's not. That's not what's happening. You can say it all day long, but there's definitely some out there, I'm sure, that are just breaking on the inside over the stuff they've seen.
Right.
And that happens. That's the job. It's not against them. It's the job. And that is where more training, continuous, consistent training needs to happen more, less so on, the physical aspect of it, more so on, like you said, being able to interpret behavioral situations, like if you're talking with somebody, seeing what makes them tick, you know what I'm saying? Psychological evaluations and training, not just evaluations. Yeah, they might seem straight, but if they're not going to if they don't have enough knowledge to understand behavioral, ticks or stuff like that, then it's not that good when you interact with the public on a daily basis, because everybody's different. Your tick might not be my tick. You know what I'm saying? I could be very good at hiding certain stuff that you'll never know unless you're trained to see that type. You know what I'm saying? That would be extremely beneficial for officers, I feel, if they were able to read, like, not necessarily body language, but you could throw body language in there, but just try and understand, like I said, getting out in the public and understanding the public that you serve. Don't just stay up in your hole and go out to an area you never visit, so you don't know what to expect, so you're going to be apprehensive and already on your guard, and sometimes it's going to be for no reason. Like if you go into an area, even if it's just a patrol, and you've never been there, so you're naturally on your guard, the regular people on the sidewalk, in the street, they're going to see it. They're going to notice that. They're going to know, hey, man, he's on his guard. Something's off. And then that's going to make them worry. And that's just a whole level. But if you just get out, like you said, with the people, understand those that you're there for, and understand how everybody works. Everybody's different. Everybody's mind works different. If you can figure out that and train in that consistently, and when shit goes down, pull that officer aside, make sure they're okay. Don't let them say, hey, no, I'm fine, and go on about their business. Now, hold them, and in the long run, hopefully it'll be okay. Hopefully, they'll understand that, hey, man, I didn't like it at first that you pulled me off, but later on, with everything else that developed on afterwards, I see that was probably the right decision. There's nothing wrong with that. There's zero wrong with that.
Absolutely. Just kind of going back to Mr. Brooks, he got into the scuffle. He got into a scuffle with the police officers, and I think that was something that really kind of, shocked me. I think they tried to arrest him, and then, of course, he scuffled to the ground, was able to get one of the tasers, and then as a result of getting the taser, he was running away. It looks like he pointed it back at the officer.
Yeah.
Saw the taser, shot him. Was it 3 times in the back?
Yeah, I want to say as well. Yes.
So that's where it gets really, really sticky. It's really sticky right there. Right there.
Very.
because now that's where the adrenaline comes in.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's why I can't say yay or nay on whether that was right because I wasn't there. I could say I probably wouldn't because I would have known that's a taser and, that's not going to kill me. So why would I go after him like that? I'm saying that after the fact as a guy with no law enforcement training who was in that situation. So my opinion on that goes, no one really cares. And I understand that. That's why I like we were talking about earlier, the before situation, and for me in particular, it's the aftermath. It's the aftermath, and no one seems to really be talking about the aftermath. All right, so again, if you want to say he was justified, if you want to say the officer was justified, if you want to go that route, okay.
Well, let's look at that.
Look at what?
Well, if a person refuses, if you try to arrest a person, obviously we're not experts on this.
Okay.
We're just looking at this, and we're just going to examine this, just as people, observing this situation where
Yes.
the officer obviously made a decision. So when you have a person who refuses to allow you to arrest them, then what's next? Do you pull your gun and demand that he allow you to arrest him and shoot him? You have his ID.
Yeah.
You can't find him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I look at everything that's out there, all the details where like again, they have his car which has a license, you can track that. You have his ID which has address, you can obviously track that. He spoke about was it his sister or his girlfriend being a few blocks away. So there, if he's not at his house, you can go, start looking at other houses, who that person is. Maybe he's there. So you got a lot of that. And I feel if it was me, considering how long that, back and forth went, I would be obviously thinking, all right, if this happens, it can go here, blah, 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 but I got this, I got his ID, I got this and that, but that's me. That's how I think of everything. I think a little bit ahead of the situation I'm in. And then, okay, so let's say, like you said, we go to arrest him. He fights, he resists. I think he punched one of the officers, and they did hit him with a few tasers, but adrenaline's going. Some people can do that. They can take a taser and keep going. He grabs the others. That officer yells, "He's got my taser." So, and then you could argue, well, that officer, because of everything going on, didn't hear that. And that's possible. That is possible. So let's go with that. All right. Tasers, though, I would imagine, I could be wrong. And again, adrenaline could totally cloud this. I know exactly what a taser looks like if I'm an officer. Every which way you spin that thing, I'm going to know because I have one. And adrenaline's going, he's running, I'm right behind him. He pulls it, I see it swing, so I'm going to see the coloration of it. I know he didn't have a weapon, so he took one of ours. I have my gun, it's right here. Could he have taken my partner's? Possibly. My partner didn't say it, or if he did, I didn't hear it. But I'm looking at it. I'm seeing it swinging. So obviously, again, adrenaline's heightened even more because now I do have a weapon pointed at me. So you watch it point at you. From me right now, I'm saying I might have been able to discern whether that was a actual weapon or, a loaded gun or a taser. I'm saying that with zero expertise of the situation. So I don't know. But if that was the case, I would not have dropped my taser to pull a gun out and then kill him or shoot him, whichever word you want to use. I know that for a fact. If I was able to know for a fact that that was a taser, I would not have dropped mine. That's just me. And I'm saying
Right.
that with not being in a situation, it could change if I ever was. I don't know.
That's definitely it's definitely an additional charge in the courthouse. If
Yeah.
you refuse arrest, you run
Yes.
from the police. That's an additional charge. I mean, you have a litany of charges. You could charge a person, and then the
Yeah.
judge has the rule on those charges. So, looking at lethal force, when we use lethal force, has to be a serious implication of danger. I would imagine. I mean, we just don't use lethal force and justify lethal force for simple misdemeanors.
Yeah.
I
I
don't.
Go ahead.
I don't know how. I don't. I guess that's where law enforcement has to kind of explain that part of it.
Hmm.
How does a misdemeanor become deadly? Why does a misdemeanor become deadly? And that really, how can we avoid that? Because it's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
If if you come to my house and you try to arrest me, but you have no warrant, and I refuse to allow you to arrest me, you then pull a gun on me?
Yeah. I think so. Let's take that situation. Let's take non-lethal situation and a gun's pulled out. I think that goes or that's another part of obviously police not training but more not so much training but more so reform needs to come in, what do they call it, qualified immunity, that whole thing,
Right.
because you can say what you will about the Rayshard Brooks, justified or not. I want to get off that subject for what I'm about to say right now. Um, but for, like you said, no warrant, come to your house, blah blah blah, gun point out, or just like a suspicion, because there's numerous, and this is not only for black individuals that ended up getting killed. Not only, probably if you were to look at the numbers, probably more so, 100%. I haven't looked at that number, but probably so. But everyone in general, you have that qualified immunity where if they just like if you're reaching for your pocket, oh my god, I just have to say, I thought it was a gun. Boom, that person's dead. Your Honor, I thought it was a gun. Walk away. No charges, no nothing. And it seems like that is happening. It's almost like the boy who cried wolf. And now people are starting to realize you're crying wolf pretty often. You're throwing that up pretty damn often for situations that it's not even it's not even called for. With like Philando Castile, right? Was it he was reaching for the shit he fucking told him he was going for. But he thought it was something else. Even he heard him say, I'm going after, was it my ID or whatever the hell, license. He heard him say that. But all the officer had to do, I thought it was a gun. He had
No
no
problem.
inclination to think that. Called it up, thought it was a gun, killed the man, got away. That shit needs to stop. There's way too many situations where it's an unarmed individual, but the officer thought he saw something and then just opened fire. Ended up being nothing. So at that point, you murdered an innocent person, an unarmed, innocent person.
Well,
But you still get away with it?
well, I think in some eyes, and or at least in the eyes of the law, he was not a citizen. I know that's a hard thing to kind of say. Well, how can he not be a citizen?
Yeah, I will say I am a little
How can he
confused on
not
how
be a
that.
citizen? Well, I think you have to kind of look hard into the police bylaws and how they write their laws and how police officers are able to get off on killing someone In some cases, even when they kill someone and they seem to be totally guilty, they still get off.
Yes.
There's some language in the law
Yeah.
that allows them to get off, and some of that language revolves around whether or not you're deemed as a citizen of this country, which sounds weird.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds weird. Now, by definition, you think that we all are citizens, but you would have to know that some people aren't deemed as citizens under the judicial system based on how they came to this country. Yeah. So there's an assumption that all Black people are free and all Black people are created equal and all Black people are citizens, but there's language in the judicial system that identifies what a citizen is in this country. And I think you have to reference that language. But if you were brought to this country, if you wasn't born in this country, let me get my resources together on this before I start trying to quote this stuff. But you have to look up what a citizen of the United States, what quantifies a citizen of the United States under the police or the judicial system, what quantifies a citizen of this
Okay.
country. So when police officers go out to serve and protect, they're serving and protecting citizens of this great country.
Well, I'll
Now,
say that, I'll say if, because you said you want to look into it to see if you're correct on it. Because I'll say if that's true, that is automatically bullshit. Because even if you're not, you're a fucking human being. You're a human being in the end, man. And that just because let's say 100% that person's not from here, an illegal alien, whatever you want to call it. That doesn't give you the right, especially if they're unarmed, whatever the hell the case is. And you ended up murdering that person. Oh, but he doesn't belong here, or he's not from here. He wasn't born here. Just nah, man, you're good for you. Go, no, they're still a fucking human. They're still a fucking human.
There you go.
So if that's true, that is straight bullshit. And yeah, that's definitely a part where, again, reform across the board needs to happen. There needs to be some type of across the board training, and that's one thing I want to speak with JT about. Or I got another friend of mine who's been in the force for a lot longer, Cody Ellison. He'll probably listen to this one, and he liked the other two that me and you, or me and you did, and then me and JT did. But one thing he specifically mentioned was how he could tell that JT wasn't in there for long, right? He hadn't been in there for long. So Cody's been in there a lot longer. So I would love to ask him, and I definitely will, on if there needs to be, because obviously, states in one laws in one state that are for law enforcement aren't necessarily the same in this state, right? And if it's pertaining to like an individual, like a person, a human being, a citizen, whatever the hell you want to call it, stuff like that, laws like that in particular need to be universal across the board. If it's pertaining to whether or not you have the right to kill somebody, it should not differ depending on state. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that, well, it's legal in this state. That's messed up then. That's messed up if that's the case.
Right. Well, I think that, we have to kind of put that on the platform in the discussion, because I think the aggressive behavior of police officers can be supported by the law.
Yeah.
And that's one of those factors. Just kind of going back to Rayshard's case, the justice system has backed police officers and of course, police officers have been able to get off on a lot of these cases because of the language
Hmm.
that's written. And
Yeah.
the public is just not aware of that. See, we see it on the back end.
Yeah.
We see it after they've gone to trial and they've gotten off, or we see it once the video has gone away, nothing has happened or nothing has changed, and then it happens again.
Yeah.
And we sit on the back end and we're saying, there's a reason this keeps happening. It's because they keep putting themselves in the same situation, and we can't blame police officers. They have to take accountability for their own actions and violations of the law.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing I see happening ever since the whole George Floyd. In other cities, especially, I think it was Minneapolis. They got rid of that qualified immunity. I could be wrong about that city, but one of them got rid of qualified immunity. Um, so I do see that change happening because yeah, that's always what it comes down to. It's like, well, it was legal. He got away with it because that was their policy. Well, if that's their policy, then morally that is wrong and that needs to change. I don't give a shit if they went by the book. Cool. You want to back by that, but that means it's wrong. That's where it needs to change. And more people, it seems, finally are seeing that or opening up to that. Like, all right, yeah, I get it. They're following their rule books, but their rule books are flawed, and that's where the change needs to come. And luckily, I, another thing to kind of piggyback on this is, everyone's talking about the whole defund police. That title, that word, obviously, that defund part needs to be swapped. That you're not helping the cause. If you were to swap that to just reform, you would get way more people on your side at that point. Because a lot of them are just going to see that word for what it is and be like, nope, you're wrong. Can't get behind you. But then they'll totally agree with reform. And it's that's one thing that I think definitely needs to change and will help the cause and help move everything to where it needs to be. Because again, more and more people seem to realize that, yo, all right, cool, that's the way things were, and that's how y'all justified it, but that's wrong. That needs to change. We can't keep doing it like that.
Right. If the front end of this was different, we wouldn't see the back end of this. I think a lot of times we see the back end of this because, my mom would always say, you got to start it right if you're going to finish it. You got to
Yeah.
start it. If you start wrong, you're going to finish wrong.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't help the situation for sure.
So I think much is to be learned from Rayshard Brooks' situation. I think it just gives more information to both sides as we continue to have these conversations, because I think we all can agree that his death could have been avoided.
Yes.
All of the great stuff in between all of that, we're going to argue and debate that. But I think we can all agree that you shouldn't die from sleeping in a drive-through.
Correct.
So, with that being said, when people watch this, they should get out of this that we need to really try to look at both sides of it and see how the recent situations that have occurred over the last 6 months have just been a glimpse at what has been going on for quite some time. And people are marching. People are upset that people are marching.
Yeah.
People don't want people to be marching in their communities. because they feel like they should march in their own communities. And I understand that to be a part of their frustration. But this is just recourse from injustice that has been taking place for a long time. Will things get better? I'm very hopeful.
Yeah.
But I think what you can get from what we discussed today really is that, yeah, it's gray. Yeah, there are two sides to it. But we all can agree, at least, that it could have been done in a better way.
Yes. I think, like you mentioned about the whole marching, protesting in various cities. I think that's good because more people from both sides, whether you're on it or against it, everybody needs to be more open because I've probably preached this shit to death, but if you only ever see and read views that align with yours, whether you're right or wrong, you will never grow. And that's one thing I try my damnedest to do is even if I don't agree with everybody, I'll listen. I ain't got no problem listening. Hey, why do you think that? What do you mean by that? Like, explain that to me, please. I'm trying to understand, and then go back and forth. And there are a select few that I think I mentioned before that I've been able to do that with. And even if we don't agree at the end, we have a mutual understanding to an extent. Like we both post valid points, and just more of that needs to happen. If you're shut off, and it goes on both sides. If you're shut off completely from the opposing view, that's not helping anybody. You can't say we're together if you don't listen to everybody. You gotta listen to everybody. It's the only way anything's gonna work.
Absolutely. 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 Um, I'll say this just to kind of conclude what I'm feeling about the incident that took place at Wendy's with Rayshard Brooks. Um, I feel that Rayshard had a situation that was handled in a way that costed him his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want his death to be in vain because I think that his death signifies that a lot of these situations that involve black men and the police are situations that escalate because there's a serious cultural problem between law enforcement and black communities and black men. And I think law enforcement should look at how they train and how they police people of color. And I believe that these situations to occur have just kind of opened up a lot of questions about how police officers are behaving in communities. So, do we need police officers? I believe firmly that we need police officers. Do we need to defund the police department? I'm not an expert in that, but I do believe that we need policing. Um, when we say defund the police department, I really need more clarity on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm all for having a police department that works for everybody
Mm-hmm.
and having a judicial system that does not exploit the citizens of this country for financial gain.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole other topic right there, buddy.
And there's really no reason for that,
No, yeah.
you know.
Oh
But
yeah.
if you make it a commodity, if you're gonna try to use it as 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 a financial platform
Oh
to
yeah.
make billions, billions, and billions of dollars, then you need to try to understand the recourse from that,
Oh yeah.
the reaction from that.
Well, I see exactly where you're going. I think that opens up a whole nother can of worms on the whole situation. That's something if you're down, man, I'd be cool to talking about that at some point. Because I think that we're an hour, almost hour and a half in on this one. And I think that would probably go another hour, hour and a half as well. Because yeah, if folks don't know about that, oh man, that's something that definitely needs to be looked into 100%. 100%. But Terry, man, I definitely appreciate it. And as
Mhm.
always, if you come up with anything else, again, I still want to get up with you at some point and do more of a mental health centered discussion
Certainly.
because everybody knows that's a huge thing that's not talked about a lot either. That definitely needs to be. Um, but anything else you come up with, man, let me know, and we'll try and work something out.
Okay. Listen, I want to apologize to your viewers because I can't see myself on this end.
Yeah.
I can see you well, but I can't see myself. So I don't know if I'm in the camera or off from the camera. I just don't really have a clue. Can you see
I
me?
Now I saw the thing moved. Are you using your phone or your laptop?
I'm using my phone on this one.
All right, flip
And I
your
should,
phone over.
right. See,
You might, yeah. So you were using the other lens, it seems, because I can see
yeah.
something,
Can you see
but
me now?
I can't see you, but I can see something. I got some light now. But we'll take
Oh
care
man.
of that on the next one.
Okay.
Um, it's all good. I mean, it's explained. People are gonna know. But yeah, man, I appreciate you spending time here with me, and I'll get with you later, Terry.
All right, Jay. Take care, man.
You too.